Joining us now is a man I can't wait to talk to, and I think, Andrew, you might even know Gregory Gourdet. He was the Gregory, how are you? It's Pat O'Brien.
Hi.
Hey, Pat, it's Andrew. I have eaten at Departure way too many times.
That's good to hear.
He is Gregory Gourdet is the executive chef at Portland's Pan-Asian restaurant, Departure, and it's in the Nines, right? It's in the hotel there.
It's at the top floor.
And Gregory came in second in the competition, but who cares? Who's laughing now, right, Gregory?
I'm good. I'm good with everything.
And there's an incredible chef, and we're coming up to Portland in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
And I expect I'm sure everybody gets great service, but I expect...
well, Stephanie, she's a waitress there.
How did you become a chef? Let's start with that. We'll get into the other stuff in a minute.
Me? Well, I started cooking when I had to feed myself when I was going to college in Montana. I was actually pursuing a wildlife biology degree, but not really kind of knowing exactly what I wanted to do with that. And, just basic necessity, you had to feed yourself in college. It was the first time I was living on my own and paying rent and living in a house and all that good stuff. So it just kind of developed. It was a small artistic college town, and we had dinner parties and hanging out with the art department, and it just kind of stemmed from there. And my first job was actually washing dishes at one of the best restaurants in town.
And you learned?
And I did. I learned, and I graduated from college, and I went straight to culinary school. That was about 18 years ago.
One of the things I need to know from you before we get off the air is I like to cook at home. How do I make the perfect pan-fried steak? The kind where it's done all the way through. This is not what we're going to talk to you about tonight, but just as long as I got you. I put olive oil. Maybe I put too much olive oil on the pan.
But you going for medium rare?
Yes.
I think you want to get your pan nice and hot first, and then you want to get your oil nice and hot first. And then you want to make sure your steak is patted dry really well, so there isn't extra moisture. And then you want to make sure there's plenty of salt and pepper, which is the two most important ingredients. Yep. And then you go. You get in, just drop it in. Don't move around too much. Get a nice caramelization, nice Maillard reaction. Get nice crusty, and then you flip it over.
Right.
Or we could just go eat at Departure.
The first time I did, the fire alarm went off because you just gave me the greatest tip, and that's it still has some moisture on it, so it blew up the thing. So you've been very open about your nightlife and party lifestyle and clubs and music, and the struggle you had with addiction at one point. What happened?
Well, for me, I think my story is like a lot of other people's stories. We share similar stories, but, I started experimenting with drugs in high school. I grew up in Queens to parents who moved here from Haiti, so my parents grew up very different than what I did. I grew up in New York City in, the early 80s into the 90s, and I started experimenting with drugs in high school. I ate acid, mushrooms, all these kind of crazy drugs.
Right.
Because it was just a kind of different thing. And, that kind of kept going. In the 90s, there were a lot of designer drugs around. I fell in love with techno and house music and going to raves, and that's still very much a part of my lifestyle. But, along came the drugs with that in terms of designer drugs, ecstasy, and all that good stuff. So, over the course of, many, many years, that just kind of stuck with me. There isn't any addiction in my family whatsoever. So for me, it was just kind of a repetitive thing and kind of program myself into addiction. I moved to New York to pursue a career in culinary arts. I went to culinary school, I graduated, and moved to New York City, and it was kind of fast times, going to clubs, working at fancy restaurants.
I actually remember those days. Did you hang out at the Limelight and the Tunnel and all that?
Oh, yeah.
I was actually... I was the best. Andrew, shame on you.
Oh, man, you're speaking my language.
I was actually a Studio 54 guy. And I did my first acid with Timothy Leary.
That's awesome.
And he was a friend of mine. We used to run around and do his acid, which was good acid,
relatively speaking.
Relatively speaking, yeah. But what were you saying, Andrew?
I was just talking about the New York scene in the 90s, early 90s. And there was a place called the Limelight. I'm sure you've seen some movies on it.
And Greg, when did the light come on for you? When did you figure out you're in trouble?
I can equate a good 7 years of, my last 7 years in New York were pretty dark. It's, I remember the first time I was late for work because I went out drinking and blacked out. And, I can equate that day with kind of the beginning of it all. And, I teetered around for a long time, developed into an addiction to freebasing cocaine by the end of it all. And, it took a series of, getting fired from jobs. It took a series of, kind of moving around from place to place a little bit more than I wanted to. I was finally working for some really good friends of mine, and, after consecutive being late for a few times, because we all partied together, but I was definitely the one who stayed out a lot later than everybody else and showing up late for work. My friend just told me, listen, you can't work here anymore unless you go to rehab. And that was kind of the final straw, It was the first one.
Gregory, a lot of people that are like, that don't know about this illness, and they're out there and they think, how can he go from drinking to, freebasing coke? And what was that process like for you in your head? Like, how did that come about? Can you explain to people that would never freebase coke? And yet, I'm sure there's probably a time in your life where you were like, I would never freebase coke.
Yeah, I think it's a series of different things. It's you're chasing a high, and you dull towards certain things. And if you're the type of person who an excess is part of your lifestyle, you're always looking for something else. And it's also a mixture of just getting in with the wrong crowd. People with a lot more drug experience than you, those are the type of people that you're hanging out with at like 8 in the morning, and if they're showing you something new, something different, cocaine is extremely addictive. I had clear, snorting cocaine addiction, so, when, freebasing cocaine and smoking it was a completely different high, and that consumed me for a little bit, and, it was just kind of...
Is that the drug that really took you down, or...?
It was, I bounced back from that, I gave that up, but, the drinking was still there, the snorting cocaine was still there, and then, Molly came into the picture, at the end of it all,
right.
Before my last stretch.
The bottom line, we're talking to Gregory Gourdet, who's a chef up in Portland. We're going to be in Portland. He's the executive chef at the popular Pan-Asian restaurant, Departure, which is a remarkably wonderful restaurant. And I want to just get a couple things in here, and then we'll move on to the rest of your life, because you've never looked back, right? How many years has it been?
I celebrate 6 years this past March.
Right, way to go. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And I think one of the things, and I'm right with you, I'm coming up on 7 after a bunch of tries. But I think Andrew will agree. And by the way, if you want to talk to Gregory, call in 800-222-5222. And don't be a moron and ask him about how to cook stuff. That's so lame. 800-222-5222 is the thing. But Andrew and I talk about this all the time. That I don't think, and I run a group over at our West Hollywood thing, and we talk about this, that unless you have some sort of consequence at some point, even the smallest one, like losing your job or somebody saying, that's a good thing, right? Because then you can take a look at yourself.
Yeah, I think there's a variety of different consequences too, right, Gregory? We've got mental, physical,
I didn't get sober till a couple years after my bottom. I think that was my bottom, those last few days in New York, and I entered rehab, but I only lasted a month in rehab before I moved to the West Coast. And, I was trying to get it together, but, I really had no one in my life who was in recovery, until I moved to Portland, Oregon. And my sous chef was sober 2 years, and, I was 32, and he was in his 20s. And I'd never met someone who hadn't drank in 2 years before. It was mind-blowing.
So that's a godsend right there, right?
Oh, definitely. And I would hang out with him and his friends, and they were just normal people. They were all chefs and just living normal lives. I would immediately run to the bar after hanging out with them, but something in there was making sense.
But by the way, let's not get crazy here and call chefs normal people.
Yeah, there is something about the culinary arts, though, that culture and that whole sort of tribal group, right?
It's
tattoos and drinking,
we're playing with fire, we're playing with knives, we're working all night. It's a hard life, Yeah. So,
but it takes a kind of dedication that you have to have a really clear mind, don't you? It's not a matter of, when I watch a good chef, and I know a lot of chefs. The focus on the food is so intense.
Razor sharp.
Razor sharp, yeah. Why is that? Because, well, I know why, but it's just like when I watch, let's say, when I watch you, just every cut has got to be, just exactly right. Is that what is that? Perfection, right?
Yeah, I think there's a sense of perfectionism. There's a level of perfectionism that you need to have in your life to kind of be a great chef. You can be a cook. you can be a young cook and kind of party your way through that, but to become a great chef, you need razor focus. There's so much good talent around there, and food is so dynamic. What you can do with it is absolutely amazing and endless. So you need all your brain cells, you need all your soul, you need all your heart to be able to really kind of be amazing. And ever since I got sober, I've never had to look back. I'm not the type of person who craves or misses the lifestyle by any means. And I've been given so many amazing opportunities throughout this whole thing, things I never ever imagined would happen, and it's just been fantastic. And
so, Gregory, as a chef, you're dealing with food, you're dealing with taste. Wine is a huge part of the market you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And cocktails in Portland, right? It's kind of the town of the cocktail these days.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that? How do you make sure pairings are correct? Do you rely on other people? Do you feel pressure sometimes because of that?
I definitely have a great support team in terms of events and things of that nature. I studied wine in culinary school. I had a good chunk of my career where I did drink, so I base it all on kind of just knowledge. But for those strict pairings, I definitely rely on team members to help me. Trusting my front of house staff, my wine director, my beverage director, and kind of if I have to, I just go off and nose.
When you stopped like smoking and drinking and all that, did it change your palate?
Oh, absolutely. It 100% did. I stopped smoking, 15-year menthol smoker the day I got sober, so everything just opened up. I could smell better, I could taste better. I truly know I became a better chef when I got sober.
That's great.
Gregory Gourdet is our guest, and he's at GG
30,000.
GG 30,000. What's a 30,000 mean?
I just wanted to find something a little more infinite than 3,000.
A lot of zeros in there. It's at GG 30000. Well, now you've gone completely the other way, as we all have when you hit sobriety. Is that you work out, you go to yoga, you're doing all that, and is that part of your recovery as well? Is just keeping your body, saying I've been there, I've been the other side. I probably weighed 100 pounds at one point.
I don't know. I think for me is like I got so conditioned to working on so little sleep, and I think a lot of times when people get sober, they can't sleep for the first part, and I chose to just exercise like crazy. So I was physically tired at night and just crashed. I never went through a period where, I couldn't sleep because I was getting sober. I just hit the gym, and all these things started happening to me. So for the first few years, I just wanted to stay in shape and work really hard, and I it was just a way of keeping things at bay. I exercised at night because I used to go to the bars at night and used to go to clubs at night, so it just kind of replaced everything.
And I think one of the things that we teach one of the things at the Clean Centers is that you give somebody structure, and you replace. Alice Cooper once told me that when he stopped drinking, man, was he a drinker. He just switched to golf. He switched to something else to take all his attention, and now he's a scratch golfer.
Yeah, and that can work. At the same point, you still have to work on all the underlying issues. Certainly, doing things to take up your time are important, and a lot of that we like to see with people giving back. And I'm sure, Gregory, if you think back to if you were younger, and you must probably meet people all the time in your business. Do you often have people coming up to you, or do you see people that are employees and you notice they have a problem? How do you handle those kind of things?
I've gotten more popular, and through a series of just constantly getting interviewed, I've just come to terms with speaking very openly about my addictions. I'm a member of AA, and we're not supposed to talk about that publicly, but for me, it just helped me so much, and I've been asked so many times what is behind my story that I just had to come clean and be very honest about everything, and I've been able to help other people, and that feels really great. My very good friend here, older gentleman, this established chef, he reached out to me. I've had people reach out to me from different cities and states, looking for help. They're on their third or fourth DUI, and they need to make a change, and they've heard that I was sober, and they asked me for help. So I think it's all been working out where, just being as vocal about it as possible, especially someone who's mildly a public figure, and you can help people. So I've taken that road. Thanks
for joining. We're going to be up there. I go to meetings when I'm in Portland. I went to one that was so far away, I couldn't get a taxi to go there. It was an interesting meeting. It was the one upstairs, way out. I don't know if you know that one, but you'll enlighten me on the good meetings in Portland when we come up there, okay?
Absolutely.
And we'll go to the meeting together. We'll eat, we'll go to the meeting together, and we'll hang out.
Eat a departure.
That sounds awesome.
And we can take an Uber now. Have you tried to get an Uber in Portland?
Yeah, seamless. It's great.
Oh, it's seamless.
Oh, so you're pro Uber. We've been trying to find pro Uber people in Portland.
I am 100% pro Uber. I am.
Okay.
You know why? You know why you have Uber up there? Andrew and I signed that petition from down here.
Yeah, we did. We couldn't get a cab to save our lives, and we ended up hiring a car to drive us around for the 4 days we were there, and it was just...
He didn't know his way around.
Yeah, he didn't know his way. He had no idea where he was going.
Hey, Gregory, congratulations on your sobriety.
So much.
I can't wait to meet you, and your message is great, and I'm sure you helped a lot of people with this tonight. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much.
There he is,
Bye-bye.
Chef Gregory Gourdet, who, like a lot of us, just said, I've had enough.
Yep.
And he had on another level, too. A lot of people think that when you're at that level and you go to those clubs and you hang out and you got some money in your pocket, that's all as rich guys. It's a moral issue. It's not a moral issue,
Yeah, and he's a perfect example of progressive addiction, where instead of just like some people, they'll take drugs and then all of a sudden they're like almost instantaneously addicted, or they become addicted without realizing it. He obviously graduated slowly from drinking, binge drinking, and then to using harder and harder drugs. So, it's whatever your story is out there, it's always a little bit different, but there's always some commonality between everybody's story.